Play and Trade Guitars is giving away this Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul to one of you. How to enter? Subscribe to Play and Trade Guitars on YouTube, and we'll give it away when we hit 50,000 subscribers. Hey, welcome back to Play and Trade Guitars. I'm John, that's Zach behind the camera, and this is Play and Trade Guitars, where we play it and trade it. Continuing our look at the best-selling guitars from both Gibson and Epiphone. Today, looking at the Epiphone 1961 SG Standard. This is a really cool collaboration between the Gibson Custom Shop and Epiphone, and this 1961 Epiphone SG Standard sports some really cool and high-end features. We're going to take it out of the box, we're going to put it on the bench and take it apart, talk full specs, and then of course we're going to plug it in and play it. At the top, if you're in the market for any new gear, use our purchase link down in the description. You support our channel directly when you buy using our link. We've teamed up with Zounds to make that super easy. They have fast free shipping and no credit payment plans that makes buying new gear really easy. Without further ado, let's get to work on this 1961 Epiphone SG Standard. A big selling point here is that we have a hard shell case that comes with this guitar at an $899 price point. Zach, let's get down on the floor and flip these latches and take a look. Flipping these latches, we'll take our first look at the aged classic white finish on this 1961, it could be called a Les Paul SG Standard. Called Les Paul, you actually even see Les Paul on the truss rod, which is not even included on the Gibson version. That's because in 1960, the Les Paul, of course, ceased to be. It was redesigned as what we now call the SG, but for a few years there, it still had Les Paul's name on it. So this is really going back to a historic take. Again, a collaboration between the Gibson Custom Shop and Epiphone, which is super cool, on the 1961 Les Paul SG Standard. And this guitar is going to have some high-end features like actual Gibson Burstbucker 2 and 3 humbuckers. You see these really cool Epiphone Deluxe kind of double-line Kluson style with the tulip knobs. The finish is actually pretty striking out of the gate. I don't think I realized that it wasn't a gloss. It's actually more of like, kind of like a satin gloss finish, kind of somewhere between. But for $899 with the hard shell case, with the Gibson and upgraded electronics, it's definitely going to be something to pull apart and take a close look under the hood. And I'll tell you what, in the hands already, it feels really nice. It's also super light, as an SG tends to be. That's because it's thinner, of course, than a Les Paul. And it was one of those lean, mean playing machines that was designed to compete with the likes of Fender and the Stratocaster. And the SG is just one of those all-time classic guitars. I love the white finish. Now, when I was doing my research to compare the Epiphone equivalent of what we showed you with the Gibson 61 SG Standard, I noticed that there's two options. There is another guitar, I'll pull it off the wall. This beauty right here in Pelham Blue actually has a gloss poly finish. This has a price of $499. And this is gonna be the one that I showed you. However, the newer iteration is this 1961 Les Paul SG Standard. And the reason I think I want to show you this one is because at $899, you would be having a pretty tough time spending $500 on this, buying a hard shell case for what, 150 bucks, and buying a set of American Burstbucker pickups for $300 for the set. You cannot string together the value that you're getting out of this guitar by piecemealing it together with this guitar. If you purely want to spend less dollars, and if you prefer a gloss finish, I would actually have you check out what's now called the 60s Epiphone SG Standard. And just to add the confusion, this was originally called the 61 Epiphone SG Standard. It was renamed to the 60s Standard because we now have the 1961 Epiphone SG Standard. But that's just the world we live in. Lots of production models from Epiphone. Both of these are really cool. I just want to point out that this one's $499 and this one's $899 with the hard shell case and the upgraded Burstbucker pickups from Gibson. Comparisons aside, why don't we take this over to the bench and take it apart before we plug it in and play it? Drop a comment as we go. So this Les Paul SG comes from the Inspired by Gibson collection from Epiphone, which has turned a lot of heads for providing really high quality guitars at great prices, which are kind of direct counterparts and direct comparables to the Gibson models that they're currently producing. Let's start up at the top of the headstock. You have the Inspired by Gibson open headstock, open book headstock design, Epiphone and the crown. And this is cool because, like I said, the Gibson didn't even sport this, but it does have the true Les Paul truss rod cover, which is super cool. Coming down, we have a Graphtec nut. Piece of Indian laurel, probably not the best piece of Indian laurel I've seen, but it's gonna feel a lot like rosewood. Acrylic trapezoid inlays, bound fretboard. I like the aged cream look against the white of this fretboard binding. And then coming down here, one of the hallmarks of an SG is that the body meets the neck all the way up here at the 22nd fret, giving you unencumbered access with these Florentine horns to the very highest registers. And as we come down, this is a huge feature here. This is basically a set of Burstbucker 2 and 3 humbuckers that would cost you $300 a set if you bought them independently. And one thing I want to point out that kind of even surprised me is the finish is much more satin looking than gloss. And until you see it in person, you don't quite realize that from the pictures. But it's kind of a satin gloss feel, and it's definitely more of a cream aged white, as it's called, aged classic white. You have standard volume, volume, tone, tone, three-way switch. You have the small guard, as they call it, instead of the batwing larger guard that encases both humbuckers. This is a vintage throwback to what it would have looked like correctly in 1961. And the Gibson Custom Shop has teamed up to make a really cool reproduction of that early model. On the back of the guitar, you can see these really cool double-line Epiphone Deluxe Kluson-style tuners with the tulips. Those are my favorite. I love the look of those. You get kind of this satin feel on the neck and a nice inspired by Gibson Custom emblem back here on the control cavity cover. Indian laurel can be treated like rosewood, so I like to use something like a Diodario hydrate when it's not conditioned or doesn't have quite the life you'd expect. So you kind of just baptize the board with a little bit of the Diodario hydrate. We'll get some neck measurements on this slim taper C-shaped neck. 1.67 inches at the nut, 0.81 inches at the first, up to 0.88 at the 12th. Thinner body style of an SG comes in at 1.46 inches. ABR1 style bridge. And we'll go ahead and flip up these Burstbuckers. Gibson Burstbucker 2 in neck, and a Gibson Burstbucker 3 in bridge. See the longer neck tenon? An SG needs a longer neck tenon because when that long neck meets the body up that high, you need that bit of reinforcement to hold that neck to the body. And historically, there have been problems with guitars of this design with the necks cracking. So Gibson's had to address that over the years too. So I think another thing to point out as we start to look at the controls is that we have Switchcraft high quality switches and components and pots on this guitar instead of the cheap import stuff that tends to break like crazy. Flipping on the multimeter, we're at 8.1 on the bridge Burstbucker 3, 7.8 on the neck Burstbucker 2, 3.9 combined. Flipping the guitar over, we can check out the control cavity. And check this out, I love this emblem, Epiphone inspired by Gibson Custom, which is super cool. So taking off the control cavity cover, major upgrades here. So you're gonna have high quality CTS pots, high quality Switchcraft output jack, so that's not gonna break on you, and Switchcraft SG style toggle switch. This is nice stuff under the hood here. Players always appreciate the lightweight aspect of an SG. This one feels pretty light, coming in at 6 pounds, 12 ounces, so 6.75 pounds. Actually the same exact weight as our Gibson. All right, and flipping the guitar around for an initial reaction. Definitely slim taper feel. So if you like that 60s slim taper neck, nice and smooth with that satin feel on the finish as well. I'm always a fan of satin. Slim taper neck definitely feels thinner and smaller in the hands, lets you get up quickly to the upper register without these horns getting in your way at all. 22 frets, lets you bend all the way up there. And I can tell it's gonna be a fun one to play. Remember, if you're in the market for this guitar, use our purchase link down below. Let's kick it into gear and start playing. We're gonna start with some direct clean tones. We'll fire a riff up and let you hear the different pickups individually, and then we'll put it behind a track and let it sing. Let's plug it in and get to work. I can't wait. So the 1961 SG Standard from Epiphone, high quality Burstbucker pickups. I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like about it. Number one, what I like. The pickups sound really nice. It's a $300 set of Gibson USA pickups that are in an Epiphone, and it comes with a hard shell case. What I like about that value is that if you add up what it would take to recreate that with the lower priced SG Standard 60s, it'd be hard to pull that off. The guitar presents a really nice playing experience with the kind of satin-esque feel on the neck overall. I will tell you that I'm not a fan of the real slim tapered neck. That's just me personally. I know a lot of people like those. It gets my hand a little scrunched when I'm trying to get around, and I tend to whiff more. So, mistakes are free, but when I play, I like to have a little more room when I play personally, but most people that wouldn't bother them at all, so I wouldn't hold it as a strike against the guitar. One thing I'm not sure how I feel about is the look of the satin on this guitar in particular, because I feel like with an SG 1961, I would be expecting a higher gloss. And I just want to hold up the SG Standard 61 one more time. As confusing as those similar names are, this one is giving you a gloss metallic finish, this one being Pelham Blue. But this looks kind of, I don't want to say dull, but the white doesn't pop like I would expect from like a gloss white, which I think would look really nice. And I feel like if they can do it on the $499 one, they should be able to do it on the $899 one. So that's just kind of a personal preference that I feel like I should point out. But drop a comment and let us know what you think of this guitar. I think if you want a lightweight, easy to play, slim taper neck, this guitar really delivers. It's also comparable to that 1959 Les Paul Standard that Epiphone has done in conjunction with the Gibson Custom Shop. So I think that partnership is really cool. I can't wait to see what else they bring. But if you're in the market, remember to use our purchase link down in the description because you support us directly when you buy. We have a giveaway going on. If you haven't heard, we're giving away a Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul when we hit 50,000 subscribers. Sign up in the description below. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks so much for watching. I'm John, that's Zach, and this is Play and Trade Guitars, where we play it and trade it.